What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions in their everyday lives and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about my mother. It's Christmas time, and this always makes me think about family and togetherness and bonding. And for me, that brings up my mom. I literally have everything to thank my mother for. Like everything in my life, I owe to my mother. My mother, she's a quiet, soft-spoken woman. She inspires me every day, and she was the first person to believe in me. To me, that's everything. I think the job that a parent has is to convey to their children self-belief and self-worth. And my mother, no matter how silly I was being, no matter how poor the decisions I was making was, no matter how bad I was behaving, my mother always believed in me and believed that I could be a powerful, strong man. You know, that I owe my mother for that. But you know what I think about most when I think about my mom? I think about how my mom saved my life. And I think a lot of people can say that their mother inspired them and their mother made them a better person, or their mother, did these wonderful motherly things. But I think what makes my story unique is my mother actually saved my life. And what happened was, so growing up, I had so much anxiety and so much depression. And I've told this story before, so I think it's important to share now, actually, because I want you guys to know just how much my mom means to me and tie that into the importance of togetherness and family and what family is actually supposed to do. So my mom, I grew up super depressed and all of those things, and got to a point where I decided to end my life. I was a young kid. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and just thought life isn't any fun and I don't want to be here anymore. And around that time, my mom used to take us to church every Sunday, and we were going to go on a church field trip to New York City. On the bus, and this is before, you had cell phones or navigation systems, all that stuff. We're just driving on the bus, dark roads between Boston and New York, about a 6-hour drive. And we left in the middle of the night so we could get to the church in New York Sunday morning. And then we heard a big bang, and the bus broke down, and it was the tire going flat. And we're sitting on the bus, like super duper bored. And we waited for a long time for somebody to come and fix the bus. And by the time somebody came, there was no point in continuing going further. So we turned around and went back to Boston. The issues we had with the bus were just too significant and cost us too much time. So we just turned around and went back to Boston. I thought about that. I was a young kid. I was just sitting there thinking. And I asked my mother, why does God let bad things happen to good people? And my mother said, what do you mean? And I said, well, of all of the vehicles on the road, the one vehicle I would have thought would have been protected by God's grace would have been this bus, because we're going from one church to another church. Why would God allow these things to happen? Now, what I was actually asking in my 12, 11-year-old brain is, how come bad things happen to good people? And my mother said, because sometimes God gives you trials to test you. And sometimes God gives you trials to prepare you for something later in life. Now, what my mother didn't know, and perhaps she did actually, now that I think about it, is she gave me hope in that minute, because I knew I was going through something hard. But all of a sudden I started thinking, I wonder what I'm being prepared for, and I wonder if I will like it. And in that moment, I decided to hang on to life until I could figure out what I was being prepared for. And now here I am, I sit here as an adult, and I love my life, and I love my job, and I love my friends, and I love my partner, and I love my family, and I love, but I absolutely think I was being prepared for this life in those hard times. I think my mom was right. I was going through those really, really difficult times to prepare me to be a psychotherapist and to be someone that could help and inspire people. Like, I couldn't be a psychotherapist and I couldn't help and inspire people if I didn't have the experiences that taught me what pain was and how difficult pain was. And I owe my mother for that. So as we enter into this week of Christmas, as we entered into this holiday season, I just had to take a moment to honor my mother and to let you guys know how important she is, let her know how important she is. I tell her all the time, but I don't think it's ever too many times you can tell your mom how amazing she is. So listen, what I want you guys to do, gratitude, I think, is one of the most amazing things. And I told you, I tell my mom all the time how thankful I am that I had her as a mom. What I'd love for you to do as we entered into this holiday week, create a gratitude list of the people close to you and the people in your family, and then share with them how amazing and important you think they are. So thanks for being here today. This was a very meaningful topic for me, and I'd love it if you do me a huge favor and share this message with at least one person. Share this podcast with at least one person you think could benefit from this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts where you can subscribe, leave feedback, and rate this podcast. In fact, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, leave feedback, and rate this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and I'll see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Look, it's Christmas week, and today I'm excited to talk to you about what I think is the most important thing about Christmas and the thing that stands out to me the most. And that is the importance of togetherness and family. Growing up, I grew up in southeastern Massachusetts, and some of my most fond memories were being pulled together as a family and as a neighborhood even. Back then, me and my brothers and the kids in the neighborhood, we would get together whenever there was no school. So Christmas break was one of the most exciting and fun times of our lives. And we would get together and we would play football. We would shovel snow whenever it was a snowy season. We would do all sorts of things. And in hindsight, we were bonding. And I didn't realize it at the time because at the time I would have just told you we were having fun. But in hindsight, we were bonding and pulling together as a family or as a neighborhood or as a whatever. Those are my most favorite memories. Like I can remember during Christmas break, there'd be 12 inches of snow dumped on the ground. And me and my best friend Kyle, my younger brother Isaac, we would get shovels. We would walk around the neighborhood. We would knock on doors and ask people if they needed a driveway shoveled. And we would shovel driveways and people would pay us, $2, $3, $5. And we would have money for soda and candy and potato chips and other junk food to keep us entertained. But looking back, what was really amazing was the conversations we had as we walked from one house to the next. What was really amazing is the time we spent talking to one another as we were shoveling the snow. Like that's, I think, where we built relationships that would genuinely last a lifetime. And I hate to sound like that old guy who doesn't like the fact that technology has taken over. Like, I genuinely do. I never want to sound like that guy. I think technology is great, and I think we can use technology in wonderful, wonderful ways. But I do have a complaint, is when was the last time you drove down a street and you saw a bunch of kids playing football or playing street hockey? Because those things are just not happening anymore. And I can remember a moment that happened that to me was a sign that times were changing and not in the most awesome, great ways of change. And what happened was 2010 to 2012, somewhere in there. And I went to a restaurant. And every Friday, I used to treat myself. After I saw my last client, I would go and eat at a local restaurant in Keller, Texas, which is where my practice was. And I went to this restaurant. I walked in, and I saw this family of four. I don't know why this family of four caught my eye. I'm typically not someone that just kind of gazes and stares or whatever. But this family of four caught my eye. And I noticed that none of them were talking. The entirety of the waiting period when they would get their meal, not one of them said anything. The two parents looked at their phones, and then the two kids each had an iPad. And I watched this family, and during the duration of the meal, they never said a word. Now look, I can tell you right now, technology is great, wonderful, let's use it. Let's text, let's email, let's use social media, let's do all of it. But we also have to bond, and we also have to stay connected, and we also have to bind together. And I watched that family have an opportunity to bond themselves together that they missed because technology got in the way and technology interfered. It's so important that we learn how to be a family and how to be together and how to be connected. And I think technology can be something we use to facilitate connection or technology can be something that distracts from connection. So as you go through this holiday season, I want you to remember that you're building bonds that could last a lifetime. And make sure that you use technology, and make sure that you use the social media, all these things, to build those connections and not to erode them. Hey, thanks for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor and share this podcast with at least one person you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And head on over to Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe, leave feedback, and rate this podcast. In fact, go to wherever you listen to podcasts where you can subscribe, rate this podcast, and leave feedback. And I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I'm going to be talking about togetherness, and I'm going to tell you a secret. It's not really a secret. It's kind of like a hidden piece of information that a lot of people don't understand. So a lot of you who've been following me know that I am a psychotherapist. I have a master's degree in counseling. When I was in graduate school, I read a study. And what was found in this study was actually really, really significant. Actually, I'm going to highlight a couple of things. So number one, somebody did a study about the recidivism rate of people in prison. Like when they get out of prison, what is it that drives them to go back to prison, and what is it that keeps them out of prison? Somebody else did a study about child behavior. What is it that stops kids from doing deviant behaviors? And somebody else did a study about what are the most healthy things that people can do in their lives. Now, the reason I'm lumping all three of these ideas together is because the answer they all found was families that have routines and rituals tend to raise more healthy and mentally prepared children. And even they tended to have people, when they get out of even something crazy like prison, they don't go back to prison. And why is that? Like, why is it if I want to have a child to not engage in deviant behavior, we think what they need is like therapy or ADHD medication or more sleep? And all those things are fine. You know, if you have ADHD medication is fine. If you need therapy, therapy is fine. I'm a therapist. But if you feel connected to the environment around you, you feel more prepared to make adequate and healthy decisions for yourself and for your future. It's kind of like the secret ingredient that we don't often talk about. Like, I never hear anybody talk about how important it is to have routines and rituals around family, because that makes the biggest difference in people's lives. So one of the things that highlights to me is this week is Christmas. And this is a time of people's routines and rituals. Like, people have Christmas routines and Christmas rituals, things they do and things they engage in that make them feel connected and feel close. Oftentimes these routines and rituals are handed down from generations. Like, we do this thing because we always did this with grandma and grandpa, and now we're doing it with our kids, like those sorts of things. But then there's also routines you can do as a family in a day-to-day life. My best friend he's someone that I admire a lot. He and his family are some of the most amazing people in the world. Now, they're not perfect, as nobody is perfect, but they're absolutely amazing. And the more I've gotten to know, his name is Adam, and the more I've gotten to know Adam and his family, the more I've noticed that like routines and rituals are a significant part of Adam's life. Up to and including like having a family meal every day. Like, Adam and his family try to have a family meal every day. That is a value for him. That is something that is meaningful to him. And that is something that he has raised his kids in. And I notice just how bonded Adam's three children are. And I notice just how connected Adam's three children are. And sometimes I can't help but think about those studies I read when I was in graduate school, talking about how appropriate and how healthy it is for kids to be connected to their family in such a way. So I say that to you guys to say, Christmas is a time for us to kind of slow down and connect with our families and participate in these rituals and participate in these bondings and even create them. Those of you out there who are in like a new romantic relationship, what would be a ritual that you would want to continue doing with your partner? Or if this is your first Christmas with a child, what's something you want to do to commemorate this thing? Like, imagine those little tiny things like
like every year we're going to buy a new ornament with our kid's name on it, or whatever the case may be. We're going to make cookies together, or we're going to do whatever it is together. When I was growing up, one of the things I did every Christmas was I made lasagna. I didn't love my mom's cooking, and my mom being an amazing woman, she said, well, if you don't like it, you can cook your own. And my favorite dish was lasagna. I loved Garfield and I loved lasagna. So every Christmas I made lasagna. And I want you guys to understand the importance and power of bonding and togetherness, and have a really, really good job and do a really, really good job of building bonds with your family too. So what I want to invite you to do is think of what you have learned from the rituals and routines that you've participated in the close bonded relationships you have in your life, and what routines and rituals could you create and maintain going forward so that you continue to stay bonded and connected. So thanks for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor, big favor, and share this podcast with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to this podcast, where you could rate this podcast, you could leave a comment about this podcast. In fact, do that at wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons that I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to keep talking to you about togetherness, because there's a component of togetherness I haven't yet addressed yet that I think is really, really important and really, really special, really, really exciting actually. So I don't watch a ton of television. When I do watch television, it's typically because when I'm writing books or content for the internet or whatever, when I do my writing, my creative writing, I typically don't like silence. So I'll have the television on, typically just to have some noise going. And one of the TV shows that I've gotten into over the years is something called Alaska: The Last Frontier. And this is a TV series. It's been on for several years, probably in its 10th season. And it follows a family called the Kilcher family. And they homestead in Alaska. And it's amazing to watch this family work and do homesteading. Now, I'm a city person, and I love being in the city. My favorite thing to do is be in big old cities: London, Toronto, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. Like, I just like being in cities. So this family is the type of family that, like, they hunt for their meals. They grow their own food. Like, they garden, they grow cattle and chickens, and literally everything that they consume, everything that they utilize is stuff that they've cultivated on their own. And it's so amazing to watch the family work together to achieve these things. And then in the family, each person has a thing like they specialize in. Like, one of the sons on the show, he's an adult son, he's really good at hunting, and he's really good at fixing things. And he's really good at building things. So when it's time to get the meat that the Kilcher family is going to live off of throughout the whole winter, he goes off and he hunts for deer or, whatever it is. And he brings it back, and that's what they eat for the rest of the year. And then one of the women, she's good at making things. His wife, actually, the fix-it guy, his wife, she's good at making things by hand, like baskets and stuff like that the whole family can use. There's another son he's married to a wife, and she's great at fishing. So her job is to catch as much salmon as possible so they can put it in jars, and then they live off the jarred salmon through the rest of the winter. And then her husband, he's also a good hunter, and their dad is the elder statesman on the property. So, like, the family works together, and they ultimately get farther than they would have gotten as individuals, because each member of the family contributes their skill and benefits from other skills. And I think that's the other thing about family and togetherness and bonding. We can get further as a unit than we could have as individuals. And there's something magical about knowing that I've contributed to the unit, and also knowing that I've benefited from the unit as well. It makes the unit stronger. And never is this more true than in the holiday season. Every year with this TV show, they show how the Kilcher family celebrates Christmas. And each member of the family brings a dish to the Christmas meal, and then they talk about how they created that dish. They talk about how they got the food out of the garden, or how they hunted the food out of the wilderness, and they talk about what it was like to make the meal, and then they serve that dish to the family. And I just think that is so amazing. And it really holds that lesson and that message that we really do get further together than we could ever have dreamt of if we'd gone at it alone. So I want you to think about your family. I want you to think about your unit. I want you to think about your friends. I have gotten so much further in my professional life than I ever could have gotten alone because I've teamed up with some incredible people, and they've allowed me to contribute to their lives, and I've allowed them to contribute to mine, and we all get further than we would have ever gone about it alone. So I just want you to think about the people around you that you're together and connected with and how they contribute to you going further than you ever could have gotten alone. So thanks for being here today and putting up with my raspy voice. And if you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor and share this podcast with at least one person that you think could benefit from this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts where you can rate this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, leave feedback on the podcast. In fact, do that wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie. For over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions in their everyday lives and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to continue talking about togetherness, and I want to address those folks and those situations where togetherness is a struggle because we've lost someone. I want to address those situations where the holiday season might not be a joyous time of gathering for you because of people you've lost and because of maybe family rifts or because of whatever. The matriarch in my family, my whole time growing up, was my grandmother. My grandmother was kind of the glue that held the family together. And when she passed away, for a while, it was almost like a ship without a rudder. My family was. It was like there was no glue holding the family together. And I can remember feeling lost, and I can remember feeling that sense of togetherness had been robbed from me. But then something interesting happened, and this is the lesson that I want to share with all of you, is togetherness is around us always. Like, people often say, but what about when you don't have togetherness, when there's no one close to you? If you look around your life, there is always someone in it looking to love you, love on you, and create memories with you. So once that happened, then we had to start looking in different places and building new routines. And once you do that, then you still get that same sense of togetherness. And I'm going to say something interesting about my grandmother's passing. I have my grandmother's cell phone saved in my phone. Actually, it wasn't her cell phone. She still used a landline, like a regular phone. But I had her number saved in my phone, and I thought about deleting it. And I said something to somebody that said, you don't have to delete it. You don't ever have to delete it. And I realized, that's true. In a weird way, my grandmother was always going to be with me. There are times to this day, and this was about 5 years ago, that I wish I could hear my grandmother's advice, or I wish I could have her tell me she's proud of me. I wish I could share some news with my grandmother. And I feel like she's kind of with me. I mean, one of the brilliances of togetherness and this idea of bonding is death is not powerful enough to break those bonds, right? That's the key here, is you carry these people with you in your heart and in your head, and I can still do things, and I could know my grandmother would be so proud of that. She would give me this feedback about this, or my grandmother would give me this advice about this. And you carry these people with you, and it's brilliant to recognize that death is not strong enough to break the bonds that we've made here in life. But, there's some of us have not been fortunate enough to be born into close families. And, I happen to be one of them. My immediate family is not super close. That's just part of how life has gone. It's part of what happens when your childhood has so many disruptive factors in it. I'm so lucky that I have met loving, caring people along the way that I actually consider them family. And they're part of my routine. They're part of who I hold close. They're part of who supports me. They're part of who believes in me. They're part of who uplifts me. They're part of who I lean on. And they're part of my world in a loving, caring way, just as much as if I had been born into their family. So I acknowledge, man, sometimes the holiday is not a place, not a time for joy. Sometimes it's hard. But I want you to remember, if you've lost someone, death is not powerful enough to break the bonds we've made here in life. And you still carry those people with you. I still carry my grandmother with me in my heart. I still hear her. I'm still aware that she's watching, and I still behave in a way that I hope she becomes proud of me. And I want you to remember that if you are just not lucky enough to be born into the idealistic family, there are still people around looking to love you and love on you. It is perfectly okay and acceptable to build your own support, to build your own family system that can love you the way you deserve and need to be loved. Thanks so much for being here today. Once again, please do me a huge favor. I'd love it if you'd share this podcast with at least one person that you think would benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to this podcast, rate this podcast, leave feedback to this podcast. In fact, do those things wherever you listen to your podcast. And I will see you on Monday. And Merry, Merry Christmas.